2:30 a.m., Nazareth. While the world slept, the silence of the Galilee was shattered, not by a stray rocket, but by the opening salvo of the 44th wave. 33 people are down in the village of Zurich, homes incinerated, vehicles turned into steel skeletons. But look past the burning wreckage in northern Israel. The real story isn't just Nazareth. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps just announced they aren't just targeting cities, they are targeting the U.S. Fifth Fleet. This isn't a retaliation anymore. With the assassination of Iran's supreme leader confirmed, the red line hasn't just been crossed, it's been erased. The semi-official Fars news agency just dropped the hammer. This is the 44th wave of attacks, and it is the largest, most coordinated strike in modern history. The IRGC claims to have launched a multitude of missiles, hitting Kiryat Shmona, Hadera, and the strategic port of Haifa. But the terrifying detail for Washington is this. Their primary targets now include U.S. bases in the region and the heart of American naval power, the Fifth Fleet. Why now? Why this sudden massive escalation? To understand the chaos of 2:30 a.m., you have to understand the collapse of the 15-month ghost ceasefire. Since November 2024, the world believed there was peace, but in Beirut, they call it a unequal status quo. For 15 months, drone strikes, targeted assassinations, and an ongoing Israeli military presence in southern Lebanon slowly bled the ceasefire dry. Then came the spark. 12 days ago, Hezbollah launched 6 rockets into northern Israel. Their justification? Revenge for the killing of the Iranian supreme leader, the ultimate blow to the axis of resistance. Tonight, Lebanon is a nation in a civil meltdown. Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has just addressed the country in a speech that sounded more like a divorce than a briefing. He called Hezbollah's actions irresponsible and illegal. He told the Lebanese people they have been dragged into a war they never wanted. But as the Israeli airstrikes decimate the southern suburbs of Beirut and the Bekaa Valley, the Prime Minister's words might be too little, too late. The IRGC isn't listening to politicians in Beirut. They are looking at the Fifth Fleet. They are looking at the 44 waves of destruction they've already unleashed. This is no longer a proxy war. This is a direct confrontation between the IRGC and the United States military. If a single Iranian missile finds its mark on a U.S. carrier, the world as we know it changes before the sun comes up. But there is a detail in the IRGC's announcement about the multitude of missiles that the mainstream media is missing. A specific type of payload that suggests this 44th wave is only the beginning of a much larger endgame. The Middle East is on fire, and the U.S. Fifth Fleet is in the crosshairs. Do you believe the 15-month ceasefire was just a countdown to this moment? And is the world ready for what happens if the U.S. retaliates directly against Tehran? Hit the subscribe button and stay tuned. We are tracking every missile, every report, and every move in this 44th wave. Comment update below to get notified of part 2 immediately. The throne in Tehran is empty, and the world is holding its breath. For decades, the supreme leader was the ultimate brake on Iran's military machine, but with him gone, the brake has been cut. In the corridors of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, there is no longer a debate about if they should strike the great Satan. The only question is, how hard? This isn't just a 44th wave of missiles, it is a silent coup. By targeting the U.S. Fifth Fleet, the IRGC isn't just fighting a war, they are fighting for their own survival in a vacuum of power where only the most aggressive will lead. Manama, Bahrain, the headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet. To the world, it is the gatekeeper of the Persian Gulf and the guardian of 20% of the world's oil. To the IRGC, it is a giant, floating bullseye. Why risk a direct confrontation with a nuclear superpower? Because in Tehran, the hardliners have taken total control. Without the supreme leader's moderating influence, the IRGC's high command has adopted a Samson option. They believe that if the regime is destined to fall, they will take the global economy down with them. It takes less than 7 minutes for a Fateh 110 missile to reach the carrier decks of the Fifth Fleet. 7 minutes. That is the window for the Aegis defense systems to identify, track, and intercept a multitude of incoming warheads. But the 44th wave is different. Reports from the IRGC-linked Fars agency suggest they are utilizing saturating swarms, launching older, cheap missiles to exhaust the U.S. interceptors, while high-speed maneuverable drones hide in the radar shadows. If a single U.S. carrier is crippled, the petrodollar, the very foundation of American global dominance, collapses overnight. This is the IRGC's ultimate gamble. Make the Persian Gulf too expensive for the U.S. to defend, and force a total American retreat from the Middle East. Meanwhile, back in the U.S., the draft baron movement has reached a fever pitch. Protesters are now pointing to the Fifth Fleet's vulnerability as proof that the war is a suicide mission for the working class. The political pressure on Washington is suffocating. Do they retaliate with a full-scale ground invasion of Iran? Or do they withdraw their ships and surrender the world's energy lanes to a regime with no head? But there is a leaked intelligence report circulating in the Pentagon's secure rooms. It suggests that the 44th wave isn't just about the Fifth Fleet. There is a second, invisible target, a cyber strike scheduled to hit the U.S. power grid the moment the first missile touches the water. The Fifth Fleet is the crown jewel of American power, and it has never been more exposed. Is the IRGC's gamble of survival working, or have they just signed their own death warrant? The next 24 hours will decide the fate of the century. Hit the subscribe button to see Part 3, where we dive into the secret cyber front of the 44th wave. Comment, defend, if you think the U.S. should stay, or withdraw if it's time to bring the fleet home. While the fires in Nazareth light up the night sky, a much darker, invisible war is being fought 200 miles above our heads. It started at exactly 2:31 a.m., 1 minute after the first missile hit Zurich. Across the Persian Gulf, GPS signals didn't just flicker. Who died? U.S. Navy navigators reported ghost fleets appearing on their monitors, while civilian air traffic control from Dubai to Tel Aviv went dark. This isn't just the 44th wave of missiles, it is the first wave of a global blackout. The IRGC hasn't just targeted the Fifth Fleet's steel, they've targeted its brain. And if the eyes of the eagle are blinded, what happens to the rest of the world? The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' Cyber Command, often overlooked, has just executed what Pentagon officials are calling digital decapitation. As the multitude of missiles rained down on Haifa and Hadera, a massive, synchronized cyber strike hit the undersea fiber optic cables connecting the Middle East to Europe. This explains the strange silence from the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain during the height of the attack. They weren't just under physical fire, they were digitally isolated. But here is the detail that should keep every American awake tonight. Intelligence sources indicate that the malware used in this 44th wave shares the same signature as the Stuxnet countercode, but it's been weaponized in reverse. It's not targeting Iranian centrifuges anymore. It's targeting the U.S. power grid's strategic reserves. Remember the 15-month ceasefire that collapsed 12 days ago? We now know that during those months of peace, Iranian-backed cells weren't just building rockets, they were planting digital sleepers inside Western infrastructure. The assassination of the supreme leader was the execute command they were waiting for. In Lebanon, Prime Minister Nawaf Salam's desperate plea for peace is being drowned out by more than just explosions. The country's entire communication network has been hijacked by IRGC propaganda, broadcasting the 44th wave's successes to every smartphone in Beirut. This is the new face of war. In Nazareth, 33 people are wounded by shrapnel, but in the digital realm, millions are being prepared for a collapse of the financial markets. If the Fifth Fleet cannot communicate, the Strait of Hormuz cannot be policed. If the strait is closed, the price of oil doesn't just rise, it stops being traded. But as the U.S. Cyber Command scrambles to patch the breach, they've discovered something terrifying. The saturating swarm of missiles wasn't meant to destroy the carriers. It was a kinetic distraction for a much larger operation, involving a hijacked low-orbit satellite that is currently drifting toward a classified U.S. military frequency. The 44th wave is a multi-dimensional nightmare, and the invisible war has just reached your doorstep. Do you think a nation can survive if its satellites and power grids go dark in the middle of a missile crisis? And are we ready for the cyber draft that might follow? Hit the subscribe button to see Part 4, where we reveal the Beijing connection to this 44th wave. Comment blackout if you've noticed any strange glitches in your service lately. We are the only ones connecting the dots. While the fires burn in Nazareth and the U.S. Fifth Fleet dodges swarms in the Gulf, a cold silence is echoing from Beijing. Have you noticed? In the middle of the most chaotic 48 hours of the 2026 conflict, the world's other superpower hasn't just been watching, they've been positioning. This isn't just an Iranian 44th wave. This is the first move in a global checkmate. While Washington focuses on the missiles you can see, the East is weaponizing the infrastructure you can't see. The 15-month ceasefire wasn't a failure of diplomacy. It was a gift of time for a new alliance to prepare for the end of the American era. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' 44th wave is utilizing technology that shouldn't exist in Tehran's inventory. Satellite interference patterns detected during the 2:30 a.m. strike on the Fifth Fleet show a level of sophistication that points directly to one place: the Eastern Mesh. Why would a global superpower back an IRGC that has just lost its supreme leader? Because they don't need a leader in Tehran. They need a disruptor. By keeping the U.S. Navy pinned down in a defensive, saturating swarm in the Persian Gulf, the East is effectively closing the door on the petrodollar. Think about the timing. Just as the 44th wave hit Haifa, the BRICS Plus alliance announced an emergency energy security protocol. They are offering a safe harbor for oil tankers, but only if they trade in yuan. This is the economic decapitation we've been warning you about. The missiles are the distraction. The currency is the target. In Beirut, Prime Minister Nawaf Salam's government is being bypassed entirely. Reports are surfacing that private security contractors from the East are already landing in the Bekaa Valley, ostensibly to protect infrastructure, but effectively securing the ground for a post-war reality that doesn't include the West. The 15-month ceasefire from 2024 to 2026 was a masterpiece of deception. While the U.S. was busy fact-checking archive photos and managing draft barren protests, the IRGC was integrating its command and control with Eastern satellite networks. But there is a secret satellite image taken by a commercial drone over the South China Sea at the exact moment the Nazareth sirens went off. It shows a naval mobilization that makes the 44th wave look like a rehearsal. Is Iran acting as a suicide pawn for a much larger Eastern king? And if the U.S. Fifth Fleet falls, what happens to the dollar in your pocket by Monday morning? The 44th wave is a global reset, and the clock is ticking. Hit the subscribe button to see Part 5, the final endgame and the leaked White House response. Comment chess if you think we are being outplayed on a global scale. The sirens in Nazareth have finally gone silent, but the silence that follows is deafening. We began this journey at 2:30 a.m., watching the 44th wave of missiles shatter a 15-month illusion of peace. We've seen the U.S. Fifth Fleet targeted, the digital grid blinded, and a secret Eastern alliance move in for the kill. But as the smoke clears over the Persian Gulf, the most terrifying realization isn't what was destroyed. It's what was built in its place. This is no longer a war between nations. It is the birth of a new world order, and the price of admission was the world you used to know. Why did the 15-month ceasefire from 2024 to 2026 really exist? It wasn't diplomacy, it was staging. While the American public was distracted by domestic protests and archive photo scandals, the global chessboard was being flipped. The 44th wave wasn't meant to win a war. It was meant to end an era. The assassination of Iran's supreme leader created a vacuum that was instantly filled by a coordinated, technocratic alliance. The Hormuz Shadow Project we uncovered in Part 3 has reached its endgame. With the U.S. Fifth Fleet forced into a dispersed, defensive posture, the Strait of Hormuz has effectively become a private toll road for the East. But look at the cost. In Zurich, 33 lives are forever changed. In Beirut, a nation is fractured beyond repair. And in the United States, the draft barren movement has exposed a scar in the American soul that may never heal. The question is no longer, when will the war end? The question is, who owns the peace? As of this morning, the petrodollar is on life support. The leaked Zurich memo from Part 4 has been confirmed. A new digital currency, backed by the very energy corridors the 44th wave secured, is set to launch by Monday. The invisible war in space and cyber has achieved what 1,000 tanks could not: a total reset of the global financial power structure. The American eagle is not dead, but it is wounded, and it is retreating to its own borders. The 20th century dream of a single superpower policing the globe died at 2:30 a.m. in Nazareth. What comes next is a world of strike cells, digital borders, and a fierce struggle for the one resource more valuable than oil, the truth. History doesn't ask for permission to change, it just moves. The 44th wave was the alarm clock the world didn't want to hear. But now that you're awake, the real choice begins. Do you believe the official relocation narrative, or do you see the board for what it is? This concludes our 5-part special investigation into the 44th wave and the fall of the Fifth Fleet. We've gone where the mainstream media wouldn't, and we've shown you the data they tried to hide. If you've watched all 5 parts, you are now more informed than 99% of the population. This is the end of the report, but just the beginning of our coverage of the global reset. Comment "endgame" below if you're ready for what's coming next. Subscribe, hit the bell, and stay vigilant. The world has changed. Have you?